Hello again, brothers and sisters. Some people have asked me about my current practice of religious reclusion here at Little Portion Hermitage. I've been living in reclusion 5 days a week for the last year or so, and before that I was living 3 days a week in reclusion. What this means is that the community comes together 3 times a day for prayer, and they have one meal together every day. In religious reclusion, I am experiencing those 3 times a day of prayer and my meals here in the reclusion of my cell. By the way, the word cell comes from the same root that's used for the word celestial, and in monastic thinking, it's the place where heaven comes to earth. So it's not just your room, a place where you hang out and put your stuff. It is a prayer place, and the ordinary things of life in cell are permeated with a real sense of the sacred and of the divine. Still ordinary, but imbued with an extraordinary gift. So in reclusion, I spend great time here in the cell. Of course, I'm still the spiritual father and leader of the Brothers and Sisters of Charity, so there are things that I have to do. I do have internet access. I do answer email. I do things like go to the doctor when I get sick, so I still have to go out on occasion. But it's not a normal part or a substantial part of my day. That really is retaining the character of solitude and silence with the Lord. Religious reclusion has a great history and tradition in Christianity. Of course, it was practiced by the first monks of the desert. The way they usually practiced it was they would have their cell within a 1 day's walking distance of some common buildings, including a church and a place where they would eat and gather for fellowship, teaching, and also storerooms and supply rooms and such. So they would stay in cell during the week, and then they would walk back into the common areas on Saturdays and Sundays. They would come together for fellowship, the meals together, prayers together called the Synaxis prayers. Then they would celebrate Mass on Sunday morning, gather up their supplies for the week, and go back out into their cells. By the way, in the cell they weren't always totally alone. Some of the elder monks took on junior monks, or novices, to be a cell attendant and to just live the life with the elder. Often many words were not spoken. All that happened was the junior monk observed the elder monk and learned and incorporated that into their own life, and when they were ready, then they went back out into their own solitude on their own. This was a pattern that was resurrected in the West after it had been lost for centuries, especially in the 10th and 11th centuries. St. Romuald, for instance, the founder of the Camaldolese hermits, or the Camaldolese monks, adapted a way called semi-eremitism. And in this, the cells were in the same way, scattered around a common building, or common buildings and a church, not a day's walk, but usually in the immediate vicinity, but with proper seclusion, that they could still be considered hermit cells. But they would pray together 2 or 3 times a day. They would have meals together, anywhere from daily to weekly. And they would have community meetings that they would attend, and so on and so forth. But the rest of the time they spent in cell. This pattern was also used by St. Bruno and the Carthusians. St. Romuald in particular allowed for greater reclusion for those who were called to it. In other words, they could go and do as I do, and that's pray the prayer offices and have meals in cell, anywhere from a few days at a time to months at a time, and even permanently if a monk was so called to that, and if they had tested that vocation through temporary periods first. My experience here is, first, that the discipline of community has provided a most needed undergirding, a discipline, a structure that makes my time in reclusion possible and more fruitful. I think if I were to just have gone immediately into reclusion, I might have frittered my day away. But praying together for almost 30 years with other brothers and sisters every day, eating together with them, fellowshipping with them, working with them, that prepared me better for the experience that I now have in reclusion. The difference is now I have greater time and space to really plumb the depths of things like the divine office, of really allowing the words of the Psalms and of the lessons from the Old and New Testaments and from the Church Fathers to permeate very deeply into my soul as I pray them. So often, an office, say for instance, morning prayer or evening prayer, that would take 30 to 45 minutes in community, I can often spend a great amount of time just praying those offices. The Gospels of the day have taken on a huge significance to my life here in cell, in reclusion. Again, they permeate very deeply. I'm able to receive communion twice a week during the weekdays, and of course I go in for masses and holy days, or masses on Sundays and holy days. But somebody bringing me communion has been most touching. The tenderness of that, the care of that, and to be a recipient of such tenderness and of such care has been really profound for me. Rather than finding some kind of esoteric secret way in reclusion, I tend to just find the simple things of my faith permeating very deeply into my life. In particular, the incarnation of Jesus, that divinity would take on humanity so that we who are human can taste something of the divine gift, and in the process really rediscover what it is to be fully human again in the way that God originally intended us to be. What a gift. I can be most moved just meditating on the fact that God loves us and loves me personally enough to do this. Of course, the life, the teachings, the miracles of Jesus all speak of this, but in particular, his paschal mystery, his dying and his rising. To enter fully into that great paradox, that I find wealth in poverty, that I find communion in solitude, that I find his wonderful word spoken in a way beyond words, in silence. These are all great paradoxes of the faith, and in particular that we would find life in dying to our ego, to our pride, even our religious ego and religious pride. Indeed, dying, letting go of our very self, because the self we have allowed ourselves to become often is a self that is carrying unhealthy patterns of sensual living, of emotional living, of intellectual living, patterns that are negative and hurtful, patterns that are not healthy. So to let go of all that, to die to all that, so that I can rise up and be a child of God again, that I can begin, even here on earth, to taste something of the heavenly calling that we all have. These are the truths that move me deeply. The way of the hermit is also a way of tears, because you have the silence, the solitude, the time, the space. These simple truths of the faith touch deep into the soul and a way beyond emotionalism, or in a way beyond emotionalism. Stir the heart, the very center of the being, and then permeate back out through our whole being. And we are moved to tears. Tears of gratitude, tears of joy, as we simply meditate on the life of Jesus and his wonderful gift to us. So that's something of what I'm experiencing in this way of reclusion. I hope that mystically through prayer, and even practically through something like this little video, or the music I make, the books I write, that it would also be beneficial to you. Thank you now, and God bless you.